and welcome to another edition of Wednesdays with WE. This is episode number 47, and with a lot of action happening across the globe, there'll be a lot to discuss about. And as usual, on alternate weeks, we discuss about various things that happen in cricket in a freewheeling manner. That's exactly what we are going to do in this episode as well. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready for it.
In this episode, sir, we've got a lot to discuss with you about because the senior men, senior women, our age group teams, all domestic teams, they're all in action. So we'll go bit by bit. We'll start with India West Indies. Slight anticlimax happened this week where rain sort of washed out a couple of games across the globe. The Manchester game also went away. The second test also was washed away, and then we really couldn't see a final day of any sort of action at all, or West Indies trying to secure that match in any way. What would your takeaways from this series be? I know a lot of us have been talking about how this has been a very lopsided contest. We've spoken about this in previous episodes. So, after that, keeping the washed away day aside, what would your takeaways from maybe this match or this test series be?
As usual, it was lovely to see Ashwin play straight and bowl the way he bowled, picking up 5 wickets, and the manner in which he bowled. The craft was there on display, and he looked confident. It's not easy for a cricketer to be playing once in a while because he's been out of white ball cricket and then having to bowl in Test cricket as and when he's played, which is becoming a bit of sporadic of late of Ashwin playing the test matches, that is. So, that being the case, it's not easy for a bowler, even for somebody like his experience and even for someone as accomplished as Ashwin is. It is a case of him having to really muster all his experience to be on top of his game, which is exactly what he did. Some of the dismissals were really top class. As the cynics and the cynical people might argue with the fact that it's not the greatest West Indies batting lineup, but that's not his fault. It's all about who he's bowling against, and it was good to see him bowl really in such a crafty manner. And he's also becoming more or less as successful as Sunil Gavaskar as a batter against West Indies. He's getting a lot of runs, and he's got a lot of runs as well in the past against them. He's got the hundreds, I think, against West Indies too. So he's chipped in with the bat, which will obviously please him, and that's exactly what he tries to do. Try and be a reasonable contributor in as many ways as he can, and that's exactly what he's done, and that is heartening to see. The other thing is that young Yashasvi Jaiswal is got off to a grand start in Test cricket. It was a test for him in many ways. One was the temperamental part of it. Two was the technical side of it, and also if he had it in him to play against some quick bowlers in international cricket, if they're looking to get him out. So along those lines, I think he's acquitted himself really well. He's got off to a good start, a big 100 on debut, and he really had to fight for his runs. It's not a case of him going there, getting a lot of presence from the bowlers for him to dispatch to the boundary. Yes, T20, we've seen him get runs. We've seen him get runs in the 50 overs, and it was imperative that he, of course, proved to everybody that he could play the longer version as well, which he did with a lot of application. That was heartening to see a young man adapting so quickly and as well as he did to succeed in Test cricket. That is really another plus for us. And of course, Mohammad Siraj picking up wickets, bowling his heart out on a flat track, I think was another thing that we can really be happy about and feel encouraged about. Uh, it's interesting, Siraj, because he needs to be constantly guided. But one thing about him is that nobody needs to tell him to bowl flat out. You give a ball, that's the end of it. He'll run in and bowl hard every time he's handed a ball and every ball that he bowls, no matter which format of the game he's playing. And it's good to see him pick up a 5 wicket haul because he's one guy who's almost in his head looking to get all the 10 wickets in an innings every time he walks out on the field. So that's the kind of attitude he has, and it is good for him and also for all of us to see, because it is not the best of tracks for a fast bowler, which is an irony these days. In West Indies, fast ball is not getting the kind of tracks that are conducive for them, but he's prevailed over the odds and he's done extraordinarily well. So that's another plus as far as I'm concerned. Yes, only dampener, forgive the pun, was the test match not going the whole distance because of rains. And if you look at the larger picture internationally, I think it's good we are getting rains, even though we got to really sort of bear the disappointment of not getting to see cricket and
Yeah.
results not being achieved because of rain. But let's not forget the fact that this planet needs a lot of water also, because we need it for our everyday life. Test matches come and go, but we need to run our lives on a day to day basis. So, on that angle, I think we can forego a test match now and then. So, but anyway, it was unfortunate because they all were building up nicely towards a
Yeah.
good finish. I think that is what perhaps was the disappointing aspect there. But otherwise, I think we are fine.
Exactly. Fair enough. I just wanted to tell you, maybe the longevity that these test matches didn't have, in a way, Virat Kohli had, right? He played his 500th international match in this test, and a lot has been spoken about it. Rahul Dravid spoke about his work ethic, this, that. So the tributes have come in thick and plenty, and he managed to get a century to sort of mark off the milestone as well. My question to you would probably be, each time there's a century from Virat Kohli, of course, the praise comes in, but we also discuss, okay, where does it go next? Where does his career go next? How does he evolve in the team setup, or in terms of the strategy of the team, or how, with the youngsters coming in, what does his role become? So from that perspective, I mean, the guy's just what, 34, 35, but he is getting older. So where do you think Virat the batter is going from here?
The reason why I did not talk about Virat when I was talking about the plus points of Indian team in the series against West Indies was because Virat Kohli needs to be discussed separately. For the simple reason you mentioned his longevity, and also for the centuries that he scored all along for the country. And obviously, he'll keep chasing Sachin Tendulkar as much as he can. And maybe, hopefully, overall it as well. Who knows? But what needs to be understood here is that he has grown from one stage to another in a terrific manner. He was a young kid who was obviously playing this game as everybody else played when they were young. And then he started enjoying the game. And then he tried to really sort of make use of the status of a cricketer to enjoy life more than the others did. And then he realized that you need to be dedicated if you have to play for long. He got into the phase of dedication, and then he decided dedication alone is not enough. You got to be fitter, along with having the pleasure of this game and also having to be dedicated. He decided that you need to be fitter. So he got into that phase. He added that dimension, and he got into that phase of being the fittest, if possible. So Virat became dedicated, fitter, and then he became a performer on a regular basis. Then he said, I want to be the champion. He went into that phase of becoming the champion internationally. Then he's gotten into the phase of obsession now, in the sense that obsession of um, leaving a legacy, if one can say that. Obviously, champions like him would like to leave a legacy, which is followed in the years to come and by the generations to follow. Now, where does he go from here? Is something that we'll only know once he finishes. Because can anybody say where can he go from here? Because not many have reached where he is reached now, except maybe for Sachin Tendulkar. But let's not forget the fact that Virat Kohli is perhaps started 5 years later than Sachin Tendulkar, if I'm right. Sachin started at around 16. He started around in the early 20s. So, which means that handicap is always there. And Sachin again did not have the burden of having to play the T20 format, especially as many games as Virat had to play in his career and will continue to play. So that is another thing which obviously might prove to be a dampening factor for him if you look at the hundreds you're talking about. But otherwise, the fact of the matter is that we'll only have to wait and see where it is that a human can reach. Playing for
Yeah.
so long and playing all the formats and doing the way Virat has done things, the runs he scored, and the achievements he's already had. So let's wait and see. And this is a phase also where even Virat doesn't know what he needs to do. Every stage that he grew out of, he could sort of easily transcend into the next particular phase or next particular, stage of his life. But here, what does he do? He himself doesn't know. He's got to find it because there's nothing. Is actually it's an irony. This is a stage where he's really in absolute darkness. Nobody knows what is ahead of him, and we'll know. And I'm sure that he's still got a few years of good cricket in him. And I think from the way he's carried himself in the last couple of years and the way his demeanor suggests, I think he'll try and take on the role of the mentor now for the younger cricketers. And he'll also show that he can be calm as well. He's always been known to be aggressive. He's always known to be demonstrative. Knowing Virat, if not very closely, but having seen him for so long and having interacted with him at the start of his career, I can see the changes. And he's definitely going to show that he can be calm and composed as well in the last phase of his career. Maybe that's one thing that he's going to concentrate on doing apart from getting runs.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Can't put it better than that. In a lot of ways, you said we don't really know where his career might go from here, right? In terms of just how many games he plays or what he ends up doing. But one thing we do know is all these boys are working towards the World Cup that's later this year. Now we know schedules, we know who's playing where, we know what the team insane travel load looks like. All of that we know. We also hear that the coaching team is going to be given a break, right, before after the West Indies series, so that they get some time off before the World Cup. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that, about giving coaches a break, especially ahead of a World Cup? I understand there's a workload management thing there. It helps maybe to get a fresher perspective, to just take some time off from the game. But do you think it breaks momentum in any way, especially in the year right before a World Cup? How do you sort of look at giving coaches a break at the time?
I find it very surprising that such breaks are granted, in fact, because when you get into this job, you know what you're in for. And quite obviously, as you said, leading up to the World Cup, which is not far away, the coach should be with the team. And as I understand it, it's also a case of the tenure of the coach ending after the World Cup, which means the last phase of this particular tenure of contract must be devoted to the team and also maybe um, start the succession plan as well, or for the next phase of his tenure. Who knows? That's
Right.
something that I don't know. If he's going to continue, then it would have been more towards focusing on the World Cup and also the 6 months after the World Cup. And that is something that I would have expected to happen, but that is not to be. But then, of course, it's Rahul Dravid. He knows what it is that is required of him to do for the team, and the team also knows what it is that he's done for them. So it's perhaps a case of everybody being happy with what is happening in terms of the support staff getting a break. By that I mean that the boys are also um agreeing to the fact that the support staff needs a break now and then, and also the coach and his colleagues in the support staff require a break. But if you look at it, this is something which has never been done in our system, but it has been a norm almost in the other systems across the world. So if it's something that is going to benefit everybody as a whole, then there's no harm in breaks being given. But if it is a case of the breaks being accepted on a person-to-person basis, then I don't think that's the right way to go about it.
Right, fair enough. All right. So we're talking about big tournaments. Now, one of it, of course, is the World Cup that's coming up. The other is the Asian Games, where we have a very, very young team. It's supposed to be an amateur team with maybe three senior players who can go around. So we've got a very young bunch, which now Rituraj Gaikwad will lead. India, or just the sport of cricket itself, hasn't been very multi-sport event oriented, right? We've had our own ecosystem. It's had its own ranking, own importance, own fan sort of it's like an own thriving ecosystem on its own. So with the girls went to the Commonwealth Games, they managed a silver medal. Now with the boys going there, what do you sort of make of cricket sort of integrating itself in these kind of tournaments, like the Asian Games, potentially perhaps the Olympics, if things work out for the sport? What do you make of that trajectory of the sport?
I think cricket should learn to merge and mix with other sports as well, and also understand that the athletes from other disciplines are also equally important to the country, and they should also try and understand and respect that their hard work also must be recognized by the cricketers, which is something that these boys do. They do understand that, but as a country, we need to do that, and also the fact that uh, cricket is also going to be a part of the Asia Games. People must not try and use this particular event as an occasion for them to start driving their agenda. They must not compare and contrast cricket and other sports. Yes, the arrangements will be different, the dynamics will be different. So it's so easy for people to try and compare and try and nitpick on things. That is something we as a nation should not resort to. We should obviously look at supporting all our athletes from all the departments. And the onus is on India, because India is considered to be a powerhouse in the continent of Asia. So they'll be expected to win. But I would rather would like to see India becoming a powerhouse in as many disciplines as possible in sport.
Right, absolutely. I'm actually glad you brought up this powerhouse thing, because the emerging Asia Cup, emerging men's Asia Cup also gave us an opportunity to sort of stamp dominance like that. So the girls, when they played, they managed to win. Boys came, just fell one step short, losing to Pakistan in the final. You were there, you watched that game. Can you take us through what that was like, the kind of talents you've seen in the Indian setup, and what that final loss could maybe teach this bunch that went into the tournament?
Very glad with the way the boys played. And to put things in proper perspective, the India Junior Selection Committee picked that side. And the India A side in the Emerging Asia Cup did not have anybody above the age of 22. They picked a young side, and they decided this is a platform for us to see young cricketers who will perhaps go on to become superstars in the future. They really planned it well. They really worked on good rationale here, because they felt that cricketers above the age of 22 will have a chance to be a part of the India A setup. So, unlike other countries, which included a lot of internationals, India did not do that. India stuck to picking players who are young, who have done well in domestic cricket and also in the IPL. And that was heartening to see. And they really played well. It was the unbeaten side going into the final. On the day when it mattered, yes, things did not go their way. And as usual, the song and dance will start and will be played for some time now, maybe another 3, 4 days or another 1 week. But these are things that happen in sport. But what must be appreciated is the manner in which the entire concept was thought out by the system, and the way the boys played there. For example, Sai Sudarshan, or the way the left arm spinners bowled, Nishant Sindhu, Manav Sutar, the way they bowled, and the way Abhishek Sharma batted as well at the top of the order. And then, of course, the skipper Yash Dul got runs too. He was in good nick. And this was a tournament which is obviously going to make them learn the nuances of the game and grow as cricketers. and that is the purpose of the tournament. And I'm repeating here, the very fact that India A did not have any international in its ranks, but yet did so well, and the way they played in such a dominating fashion was heartening to see. Yes, they lost the final. So what? The sun has risen this morning, and it rose the next morning that they played the final as well. So that's how I look at it. And there's a lot that we can really be happy about uh, from the way the Asia Cup matches were played by this young side. And maybe if at all one could really find anything that could have been done better was provide chances to the couple of guys, Pradosh Ranjan Paul and Prabh Simran Singh. It is a little bit of an irony because Prabh Simran Singh is a part of the Indian team for the Asia Cup, not the Asia Cup, Asian Games, and yet he did not get a game. So that is rather a blip there, and I don't think it was done with any kind of malice or whatever. That was a blip, and maybe that could have been avoided. Mm, Failing which, I think everything was fine, and we got to see a couple of good fast bowlers there. Rana was good. Angar Geka picked up wickets, and this is how this needs to be seen, because when you're looking at a young side, you see as to whether the purpose of picking them, making them play this tournament is being achieved or not, rather than adding another trophy to the cabinet.
Absolutely. Cannot agree more with that actually. We're going to see a lot more cricket, especially this bunch might end up getting to spend a lot more time out on the field. But you yourself are heading from one tournament to another. You're heading right into the Deodat Trophy in the next couple of days. Have you had a chance to catch up with what's been going on in the tournament so far, especially a match with 60 all out being the least number of scores scored in the history of the tournament?
Yeah, I was calling that game, in fact, and it is a washout as far as North Zone was
Yeah.
concerned, because it was a very poor night. It had a good side. The North Zone had a good side. They had good batters in their ranks, but they just felt like a deck of cards. So that's something that happens when a side is chasing a fairly formidable target. It's not the first time it's happened. It's not going to be the last time it'll happen, but one also must bear in mind that conditions were changing towards the second half of the game. Uh, it is clear, and it is not raining when South Zone is batting. But the South Zone batters were really up to it in the sense that they adapted to the conditions well enough. And the strange part of it was you didn't know what to make out of it, because when North Zone were fielding, they used more spinners. And it was an irony again. North Zone generally depend on their faster bowlers to produce the goods, and here it is. Nitish Rana was looking at all possible spin options that he could conjure on the field of play and employ them. A lot of spin was bowled when South batted, and when South bowled, suddenly you see Kavirappa making a mockery of everything else that was spoken prior to him bowling and prior to the start of the innings. So it is another reinforcement from Kavirappa that he needs to be taken very seriously, because he did produce a great spell in the Duleep final as well when the chips were down, and he's done it again. So he's another bowler that everybody needs to look at seriously as well. Yes, talking about this particular Deodat Trophy and the way the system is, uh, it's got to be different in the way things are done. The selector, who's a part of the national selection committee, must figure in the selection of the zonal side. Even if he's not going to be a regular member, I think he has to be a special invitee, and it's only then there'll be better coordination. There could be cases of the zonal selectors picking players and the national selectors ignoring them, and the other way around as well. So to prevent all this grist to the mill, I think the the selector who's a part of the national committee must figure in the zonal selection meetings as well. Because let's look at it practically. the national selectors know who they're looking at. And in the event, the zonal selectors end up not picking the cricketers that the national selectors are looking at. Now, how does that going to pan out? It's not going to pan out well enough for the overall hygiene of the system. So this is a big gap that needs to be corrected. I hope that this is looked into. I'm using this platform, in fact, to try and bring this out, not as a criticism, but as a gap that is easily overlooked at times, because there's so many things that are happening in cricket, in a cricket season. It's easy to overlook certain things which can make a huge difference either way. So that's the reason I think this needs to be corrected.
Right, absolutely. Talking about correction, there is a huge elephant in the room for us that we had to discuss. In fact, it's the first thing that we spoke about before we started recording, which is that India Bangladesh series and everything that sort of panned out over the last couple of days with the skipper
Surely,
Harmanpreet.
surely you're going to talk only about the cricket, aren't you?
Really? You know me, I know you better than this now. We're going to talk about it all. So we can probably start with that wicket that was smashed and everything that came off after that to the cricket, perhaps. Um, just that incident, you've coached these girls, right? So when you watched, what was your first reaction? I think that's probably where I'd like to start.
the the immediate reaction was that Arman is still vulnerable as she can be, as she was. That is what struck me, and that is a basic nature. And quite obviously, a lot of things have been said, a lot of things have been spoken. Uh, Whatever it is that one can say in her defense, that's one side, obviously. But the long and short of it is that as the captain of the team, she has to, whether she likes it or not, she has to control her emotions and try and ensure that she does not provide opportunities for the match officials, the administrators, or the fans to say things which are derogatory about her. So that's her responsibility. I think as far as uh, that particular aspect is concerned, I think she came a cropper. Uh, in fact, it pains me to talk about this because she's a very driven person. She's a very passionate cricketer. She wants to contribute. She wants to win matches for India. But yet, the vulnerability comes forth now and then. And that's the kind of person she is. She cannot control herself. She cannot be without expressing what is she feels. But unfortunately, her expressions on that particular day did not really please people. I'm sure that heart of heart she'll be really hurt that she did what she did. She will be repenting. There's no ways about it. But yet, of course, you can't blame her for defending herself, can you? After all, if she doesn't defend herself, who's going to defend her?
That's right.
Anybody and
Fair enough.
everybody would resort to that. So it's no crime on her part to try and justify her actions. But as I said earlier, the rules have to be followed. Otherwise, the system will lose its credibility.
Right. So she was particularly targeting the umpiring in that series, right? What did you make of that? Was it also in a lot of ways? I mean, some of the decisions were very contentious, but there was also this other aspect of it that Bangladesh was managing to frustrate India constantly. Their performances were not as one sided as someone might have thought it to be. The bowlers were getting under the skin of the Indian batters. What did you make of that? Was it just a lot of things piling up and then bursting out on that last day?
I think it was a culmination of a lot of things prior to even the start of that series, as far as my reading goes, because it is not something that can happen just based on one decision. I
Right.
think a lot of irritation must have really snowballed and must have erupted on the final day of the series. It's not just restricted to the umpiring decisions there. I think maybe it could have been a case of uh, her being frustrated with not getting the team that she wants. If that was the case, that could be a possibility. And if probably the other things when they landed, they was not good enough, or maybe that they are made to play without the DRS and stuff like that. There could be a lot of things that perhaps would not have really pleased her or the team for that matter. I think it's all a culmination of all that which resulted in that one particular act. So it's important for all of us to understand, either on or off the field, it's only a second or two that makes us really look bad.
Yeah.
And that's why every second we got to be very, very careful as to what we do and what we say as well. Uh, so after all this, I think it is incumbent on the administrators to have the DRS and various other things, because it's an international series. I don't know how that works.
Mhm.
I think it's perhaps an agreement between the respective boards. I think that's what it is. But since I'm not sure about it, I'm not going to venture into it. So it'll help the game, and also it will minimize not only the mistakes that are made on the field by the umpires, it will also prevent a lot of emotional outbursts.
Right, right,
All humans can only control themselves to a certain extent. They
right.
can't be machines. It has to happen sometime or the other. Once again, there's no justification from me for Arman. That's not the point here.
Yeah,
So we need to have the technology, if it's available, in order to ensure that the game is conducted smoothly enough. And as far as what needs to be done, the authorities will do. I think everybody is almost given a judgment here within the first 1 hour after the
yeah,
incident. But that's sport. After all, what will sport be without emotion? And it's happened in the past as well. Even the um, best of people have sort of burst out when
yeah.
things have gone wrong on the field of play due to same umpiring decisions in the past, long time ago. And hopefully everything will calm down sooner rather than later.
Right. Smriti had in fact suggested that neutral umpires may be one way to go forward. Do you think that's feasible for us to do?
Umpiring by itself suggests it's all about neutrality, whether you belong to the same country or not. But yes, we tend to have umpires from the countries in which the teams participating don't have a role to play. That's a different issue. But neutral umpires is always something that has become a norm now again. And the irony of it was that it came from a Pakistani captain when he was fed up with the entire world accusing of Pakistan having the support of local umpires when they play a home series. So that after that it became a norm. In fact, India and Pakistan, I think, had the first set of neutral
Neutral
umpires.
umpires.
So that's something which has been going on for a long time. Uh, and it was a surprise that we did not have neutral umpires in that series.
Right.
Uh,
Fair enough. Yeah. Did I cut you?
no, no.
Yeah, all right. I think the last thing that I'd like to ask you about this is the first word that you mentioned when I asked you about Harman was she's still vulnerable, right? And Harman herself has been someone who's been constantly vouching for solid, consistent mental health support in the team. She's been asking for a psychologist to permanently be with the team rather than just having one stint here and then needing to consult over the phone. They want someone to travel with them. Do you think this underlines the need for that kind of support for the girls? Because it does get difficult. I mean, from their perspective, God knows what she's going through or what's been on her mind for her to burst out that way, right? So do you think this sort of makes a case for a traveling psychologist with this team, someone who becomes a permanent fixture for them?
See, everything is interrelated. If the series is played as it is played everywhere else, then maybe all these things would need just a little bit of touch up.
Yeah.
By that I mean, if you have the neutral umpires, the DRS, and everything, the referrals and whatnot, which means that once you had a chance of reviewing and then a decision is made which is not going your way, you will take that. So that may lead to lesser outbursts. You may have to have very little to do off the field, or in terms of mental issues. But yes, if the mental issues are not related to the cricketing events, that's a different story. But if you had to ask me to answer in one word, I would say yes. But what is critical here is that we have to be very clear, compartmentalize, and then come to a conclusion as to what is triggering all these issues. If it is lacking in the arrangements pertaining to the conduct of the game, that's another thing. If it's got something to do with the various other things being, insufficient or inadequate in terms of accommodation, in terms of other things, that's a different issue altogether. But again, it is always said that you overcome all this and go and do what you're supposed to do there, which is to play good cricket, conduct yourself well, and come back. So the thing is that we need to be clear where the root of the problem is and then try and address it.
Got it. Got it. All right. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have maybe the last Ashes test. We're going to have the white ball part of the India West Indies series. A lot of domestic cricket, a lot of conversations about Asia Cup, Asian Games, World Cup. It's like one full packed calendar going ahead. I think that's it for this episode. We'll still have so much more to talk about in the coming episodes. So keep yourself also hydrated, sir. No room for exhaustion. As we go from one week to another.
As it is, I'm tired when you listed out the items on the agenda.
Imagine for us, reporters know this better than anybody else. Yeah, relentless season ahead.
As they say loud now, there's no rest for the wicked.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
And that was episode number 47. We did not miss out on the most important topic that's being debated now. So I think all of you have a take on that, and I've given you what my take was. And these things do happen in sport. But nevertheless, I thought this episode was going to consist of a lot of events, but after Lavanya listing out what is in store for us in the forthcoming weeks, I'm as it is feeling a little bit dizzy, but nonetheless, join me next time around. And until I catch up with you next time, be good and stay safe.